Hey, folks. All right, we're live once again after the holiday break. Good to see you all. Let's do some building in public, and I thought today I would start pretty low stakes. I mean, there's a lot of reading I've done this week. You know, I feel like things are moving so fast these days that I take 10 days off over the holidays, and we've what's happened? We've advanced so much, and I like I feel like one, yes, I've missed some stuff, but the ideas that I have keep accumulating faster than I can build them. Even in this age of AI, it's just yes, AI is helping me work so much faster, but also as a result, you know, the ideas somehow are coming faster. And I've seen some really interesting stuff this week that I really want to get out there and build. I might start jumping on here randomly and a little bit more frequently, but today, pretty low stakes little personal project that I thought I'd tinker with a little bit and kind of show you all how I think about a project from the very beginning, and I'll mention kind of some of the changes that I've been tinkering with and experimenting with this week, and we'll see if we can get something up and running here. All right, and then I will just do like a little quick check, because again, I've only really been at this consistent live thing for a couple of weeks here. So let's see if we've got, yeah, that's okay. Looks good. All right. And as always, if y'all watching in live, you know, feel free to drop a message, and I'll keep an eye and we'll adjust here. And yeah, sorry for being a few minutes late. Had some technical difficulties. What I tried to do last time was schedule it ahead of time, which I think is great if we can make it happen. But I've found that with this setup that I have going on, it's a lot easier if I can just set things up locally and then just go. Okay, so let's do that. All right, so the scenario today it's a long story. It's a very long story, and I will tell you some of the story while AI is cooking, but let's just say for now, I want to build an application that helps me manage house projects. And the scenario is that we're working, my wife and I are working to focus on projects this year in 2026 in anticipation of putting the house into the market, listing it for sale. Whether or not that happens is a totally other story, and we can talk more about that. But what I want to do here is I want to create an application that essentially helps us manage it. You know, in the past, we've worked with spreadsheets or with Notion or something like that, and what I've found is that it's good, but those are very generic, open-ended solutions, and it takes it's just not catered to exactly the way that we want to work, and I want to adjust that. So what I've been saying lately is this is the age of the personal app. So it should be fairly trivial for us to spin up something that we can work on together, and collaborate and get these projects done, keep us on task. And I have all sorts of ideas roaming around my head, and I think we could really make this thing super beefy, and I'm hoping I can over the course of the year. But for today, I'd really like to just get an MVP stood up. And so let's start at the very beginning, because I don't have specs. I don't have anything like a PRD. I just have some like random ideas popping around in my head. So I wanted to show you kind of how I generally get started. Okay. So first thing, and I don't know if this really matters a ton or not, but I create this workspace directory in my home directory, and then I try to follow this path because I still very much find Git and GitHub at the core of my workflows, and I don't really see that going away anytime soon. One of the things I'm trying to do less this week is writing commands directly. The exception to that is when I start the project. So my workspace directory then generally follows this structure that mimics the GitHub URL path, so user/repo name. So when I start a new project, I typically, the only thing what I'm trying to do this week is the only thing I'm going to do is make the directory. And so here we'll call this, let's just call it a house project manager. And then we'll change into that. And that's it. The only other thing I'm going to do now is open up Claude. And this is where we'll spend the rest of the time. So sometimes when you want to start a new Claude session, you're going to write init. Here, there's really nothing, there's nothing for me to do. There's nothing for it to do either. It's going to try to read a bunch of files. There are no files in here. I also haven't initialized this Git repository. We can make Claude do that later. The first thing we need to do is, now this depends. I may have planned somewhere else, but in this case, I've done almost no planning. So the first thing I want to do here is kind of build out a plan. And what I'd like to do, since we're live on stream, is minimize the amount of content that I'm writing down and let Claude do some of that thinking and let me react to that. So what I can do is I hit Shift-Tab is my shortcut here, which the first time you hit that goes, says auto, it will auto accept edits for this session. Hit it again, and we're in plan mode. All right, cool. So now we know Claude is not gonna try to write any code, which is good. And what I'm typically doing, I use the app called Whisperflow, and then talk to the computer, and then see that transcription in right after I stop. And I could, I can share more about that if y'all have questions or anything like that. But it's not as great for just like random ramblings, and so we'll kind of work on this, and I'll do some typing today instead. Old school way of working. Okay, so I want to build an application that helps me and my family manage house projects. All right. And then what I'm going to start with is just some basic requirements. Now, sometimes I'm specifying the stack because I care very much about what that stack is. And I mean, traditionally I'm a developer, so I'm going to include a bit of that. In this case, let's say, maybe let's see what happens if we don't. That could be kind of interesting, right? So let's kind of, maybe what I'll do here is I'll describe the types of projects, let's say. Okay, so we're gonna say these projects will range from, well, how about this? Here's some examples of projects we'll want to manage. We'll have, like, there will be, let's say, small DIY tasks, larger projects that have individual tasks, and I'll say which may or may not be implemented by a contractor, or could be DIY. And then maybe like handyman tasks that we'll hire out, and these would typically be grouped by by session. And so what I'm really thinking about here is not trying to get to the solution immediately, but saying like, here's the situation, and then we're going to let Claude do the planning for us, and then we can react to that versus having to come up with all of the ideas. So these would typically be grouped by session. It's like example. We'll have someone out for a week doing odds and ends electric work, something like that. I think that pretty much covers it. I would say that let's see. We'd want to know who in our family owns the project or task or both, and who is implementing it. Let's see if anything else I can think of. I was thinking about dictating like status or due dates or things like that, but let's just start with the basics here. And I often say this, like, let's start small and build out an MVP. We can add features after the MVP is working. And there was one other thing I was thinking. What was the other thing I was thinking? Was I think it's probably going to be pretty good at telling me what it's going to do, but so what I tend to end in planning mode on is like, okay, so Claude has some opinions that it's going to bring, and in terms of the output of the plan itself. In a lot of cases for me, I try to say, I at least want to specify what I want to see in the plan, which might end up being a little bit different than Claude would include by default. So maybe we can even just say as part of the plan, please tell me the features you'd include in the MVP and the recommended tech stack and third-party services. I'll say I want to deploy to Netlify and make sure that we're leaning on Netlify where we can versus needing third-party account. Okay, so we'll let Claude think for a minute or two, and I've noticed this has been way faster this week than it had been for me in the past. So while this is doing its thing, I'm going to be all over the place. I don't always sit here and watch this because it can be pretty tedious. And one of the benefits of what I often do is have multiple tabs open with instances of Claude and just kind of like run through looking for something that's done. And I'd love a better way of working with this. In fact, that's a future idea that I have. But in this case, I think, let's really talk about the process. And so we'll kind of watch this go through the process. Okay. So how many family members will be using this app? Okay. So it's going to ask some clarifying questions. Yep. How many, and do you need user authentication? Is this a shared app? So this is kind of a tricky one, because for me, we're on this edge of like, do we implement authentication? Because it's a whole thing to do it from scratch. it's also another whole thing to add a third-party service. Now, there are some cases where, like, let's say that we wanted to use NeonDB as the backend. We could use Neon's auth service, but then there are limitations to that as well. Like, do I then need an email service wired up? Or if I want to use OAuth, right now with Neon's auth, you can't lock it down for any public registration. So I end up in this kind of like funny space where this is just for us, but we need to have some sort of identity aspect to it as well. And the other thing is, with the level of the Netlify account I have, that I can put the site behind team access on Netlify so that nobody else can even get to the site unless they are part of my team on Netlify. And then we could decide to use something like Netlify Identity to manage the current session, or just honestly doing something simple in the sense that we could say, like, okay, well, if this person is signed into Netlify, I'm not really concerned about security here, right? Like, if somebody in my family is is trying to impersonate me, but we get the house project done, I don't care. It's fine. It's fine. So here's what I'm going to say. I'm planning to put this behind Netlify team access. So we don't need a third-party service. Everyone in the family will be will be on my Netlify team. So you could use Netlify Identity. Here's what I say. We will need some idea of identity in the app. You could use Netlify Identity, or just to keep it super simple. I'm not worried about. Whoops. Oh. I'd say preference if it's, a preference of the identity if it's easy enough. Or choose to keep it super simple. Wow, that was weird. I'm not worried about, family members trying to spoof others, and we can rely on Netlify for public security. Probably not super well said, but we'll do that. Okay, do you need mobile-friendly apps access or desktop only sufficient? I've seen this question several times from Claude, and I think it's kind of goofy. It's like it's not that big of a deal to like make it responsive. All right, front end framework. So if I'm going to clarify and say, if you're going with a client-side JS approach, Vite plus React is my preference. All right, we're going to submit those and let it keep rolling here. Okay, so I might get interrupted here as we get some feedback. Okay, that gives me everything I need. Let's design the implementation for you. And I'm not, the other thing I'll note here, and I've probably said this in previous videos, is that I tend to go through this process at the beginning of almost really the same way that I would build something. Now we're gonna have to go through a lot of these permissions. Okay, that is another project. Or another topic. Let me come back to that in a minute. But what I try to do is go MVP first, and then clean up that MVP to make sure that it's got the functionality that I want, and then add the styling later. So I tend to, like, you do whatever you want to do, Claude at the beginning for this first pass, and then I'll bring my opinions about the design, because really I want to make sure it works first. So another thing that popped up here in this permissions piece is I feel like I've been lazy, and what I really need to do is come up with a strategy for kicking off new projects in a way where I can move faster and not need to answer some of these basic questions. Because what I've found is that I'm saying, yes, go ahead, Claude, to the same questions almost every project. And I know there's a way to do this from a global instance. In fact, while we're here, let's, this is working on it. We might as well look, right? Let's do it. Okay, so we'll put this over here so we can still see Claude in the background here. Actually, let's do this a little bit differently. Instead of going to the browser, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna open up a new instance of Claude here in this same, I'm in this same directory here. So we can kind of go back and forth. Typically, this is not a great idea because my expectation would be Claude is writing to the project. We're not to that point yet. This feels relatively safe for me. I could do this in a different directory too. I'm not really worried about this. So here's what I'm gonna say is, so I haven't done a lot of research here. So again, just leading with the question first. Say, I find myself giving Claude the same permissions, and I'll just say same basic permissions whenever I start a new project. And I start a lot of new projects. How can I set some default permissions so that you don't ask me the same questions every time? And I didn't go into plan mode here. It doesn't seem necessary. It seems like this should be obvious, like it should just come back with an answer as well. Okay, and so it's looking, yeah, it's interesting. It's reading Claude's documentation to try to give me a good answer here. Okay, so until we have an answer here, what I'm trying to do here is I've gone back and forth for years. I mean, our story is this classic story of we were going to move into this house and live here for 5 years. And we made that decision 12 years ago. It's funny how time works like that. And for the last several years, the family has grown, and we know we need to do something. So it's, renovate, extend, or sell and buy. And so there's been a lot of research that has gone into those various options, and pretty quickly came to that conclusion of probably the best thing is going to be to do the sell and buy. But and well, there's a way to say this, is that one of the nice things I think about taking this approach of, hey, we're going to sell, is you end up doing, there's kind of like two different types of tasks. It's like, okay, your mind is all basically on like, this is going to the market, so I'm going to do what I need to do to maximize the value, the sale value of this house. And there are two different, so that's the main motivation, but there are some tasks that you would do if you were just like even if you were going to stay here another 5 years, 10 years, etc. And then there are some tasks where you're just doing it because like it's a bandage and it helps you get more money in the short term. And that's something I actually had thought about and meant to include here. So I think that that's probably some sort of like tag or dimension or something that we would use to want to track in these tasks, because as our plans may evolve, we get, let's say we start wavering a bit more as we get into it, we can prioritize those tasks that we would want to do anyways, regardless. And there might be different dimensions to it. Like, well, you would do that project anyways, but you might do it a little bit differently. So it's still kind of, we've got our filter, we've got our selling hat on, but we got some flexibility there. All right, so we have a question over here. So the plan is done. The plan is done. This is great. So I'm going to leave this right pane alone for a moment while, because that's kind of just something we're doing in the background here. Okay, let's walk through this. See what we see. Okay. Wow, we've got a lot. Holy smokes. All right. Got a family app to manage house projects. Yep, great. Netlify. Okay, so we're going to include projects with these CRUD operations. Create, read, update, destroy. Project status. Seems like a decent way to start. All right, tasks. So tasks will be subtasks within projects with to do in progress done. Okay. Family members manage a list of family and contractors. Assignment would be the owner and implementer. Okay, so I'm going to assume those are different fields for now. We can always change that if they're not. Yeah, okay, great. Okay, so what is it? Oh, this is interesting. Cool. So it came up with some other ideas like photo attachments, cost tracking, due dates, reminders, calendar view, comments, search function. This is amazing. Like, you think about an app that has all that stuff. Like that would be incredible. I think we should eventually, but not today. Okay, so Vite React TypeScript, cool. Tailwind, great. Love me some Tailwind. Sad to see some of that news with Tailwind this week and having to lay off the majority of their team. A small team, but still, impactful and still a bit of a sad story there. And we're going to use Netlify functions for our backend. This is great. And this is a pattern that I've come to love. Now, I love me some Astro and some TanStack. You get everything that you need in this nice, neat little package. Astro is more of like everything's there, and TanStack's more like plug in, unplug kind of a thing. So this is interesting. This is what I was kind of wondering if it would come back with, yes, we should use this external DB for storage, or we can use Netlify blobs. I'm going to actually suggest in this case that we do use an external DB. I think that for really quick projects where we don't want to spin up this separate account, blobs are great because you don't need to do anything else, but there are limitations because a blob is just a file, and in query it's way slower. It's not really built to be necessarily a data source, but it does work really well for like quick POCs and that sort of thing. So we're going to use React query to manage state. Okay. React router, right? Okay. Yeah, because that's the recommendation for Vite. I thought we were on 7, but we're gonna let Claude do what it wants to do. It's gonna use React hook forms. Okay, again, I don't need to be super opinionated about that. That seems fine. All right, and then for identity, simple user selector, rationale stored in local storage, no auth service needed, Netlify identity. Yeah, Netlify identity was deprecated earlier last year. it does still work, but there's some quirks with new, and I don't think we can get it turned on by default. I think we have to go through kind of like behind the scenes or through support. So I think that's fine. Pick your name, and then it stores it in the session. We're all going to be working on individual devices anyway, so that's fine. All right. I'm not going to go through the structure too much because the schema, it can always change. So let's see. We're going to add the foundation first. So add some data, the core UI. So there's two things that, actually 3 things that I'm going to add here. All right. So a few things I'd like to change. One, what do you say? I think we should use a database here. Let's use Netlify DB, which is a wrapper around Neon. 2 is only do minimal style for now. I'll bring visual opinions in a future step. Let's focus on functionality. Don't deploy yet. We'll work locally. We'll work locally until bring others in, and because we're not using any Netlify features that require a live site. We should be able to delay this. Oh yeah, here's another one. Use the Netlify Vite plugin, and you can run dev and get the equivalent of Netlify dev without needing the Netlify CLI. Okay, so everything else looks decent enough. At least we can, we can see what happens. All right, so it's going to do some work. So let's pop over here while we keep an eye on this. What do we got here? Okay, you can set global default permissions in your user settings file. Okay. You can also set a default mode. Okay, so let's see if it can do it, because I don't really feel like looking at all of these things. So let's do this first. Let's look at permissions. Oh, no, okay, let's not worry about that then. Config. Yeah, so there's not really anything in here I feel like right now that I need to adjust. So will you set these little defaults for me? I think like, what are some of the things? Okay, pause on that for a second. Let's pop over here. All right, we have a new plan. Let's just look for what's changed. Yep, using Drizzle for the ORM, which is great. Netlify DB, super. And now we've got this Drizzle syntax for our schema, which is great. Database setup. Excuse me. And Okay. We're gonna, yeah, let's just tell it to go, and then it'll probably it might stop when it needs some input from us for the database. But let's see what happens. Okay. Interesting. All right, let's go. Cool. And notice, I think it disappeared. But there was something that I think it was down here. I don't know. My brain's not working right. But would have given me the option to write that plan to file and then to just go into that file, open it up in VS Code, and edit it so that you could make these like small nitpicky changes. I'm not really worried about that because if there's something I want to nitpick, I can I can just open up the project or I can run a new prompt and tell Claude what to do. Okay, so let's see here. We're not, yes, commands. All right, so back over to the other pane. Let's see what's up here. Okay, so global things that I feel like these things that I'm doing every time. Oh man, back and forth. Context switching is the new cool thing to do. I used to hate context switching, and now it's just like, it's my life. It's my life. Do you want to proceed? What are we doing? What in... And copy to... What in the hell? Okay. Can't you just init the project in this directory? Let's see. It's like a crazy complex command when it felt like, yeah. What it was trying to do was run the Vite CLI to kick off a new project, but it was doing this like chained command where it was going to put it in a subdirectory in my current working directory, and it was going to copy it to a different directory and maybe back to this project. But I've done this process manually and also worked with a lot of these framework get started CLIs, and there's always an option to just use the current directory. All right, and most of this is just going to be like, again, these permissions that I get really annoyed because I'm like, I'm constantly telling that it's okay to run these things. And I think I don't just want to blanket allow everything, because npm run blank could actually do some really nasty stuff in a certain project that I don't want it to do. But npm run dev, npm install, locally, I don't ever care about that. It's like, I don't ever want to answer that question again. So, so let's see, we set these global defaults for me. Oh, we gotta go over here. Basic npm commands, etc. Basic git commands, enough to enough for typical workflows, we'll just say. Let's see, commands for opening GitHub PRs. I feel like there are a few sites that I'm usually telling it it's okay to work with. Yeah, so I just told Claude in the project that it was okay to run Netlify DB init, which is going to provision that Neon database for me. I am already logged in to the Netlify CLI, which is why this will work. Okay, forgot about this. I do this all the time. Using the DB does actually also require having a Netlify site. Yeah. Okay. So what do we want to do? Let's ask this question. I want to link to a Netlify site, but I want to use the Git flow. Netlify. Let's just ask and see what it wants us to do. Should we push to GitHub first and then have me create the project? I know the answer to this, but I want to see what happens. Or are you able to create the project first? And I can link it to GitHub later. Let's see what happens there. That's interesting. So I think that answer is wrong, actually. It should be able to just create the Netlify site, and then we can link to that site. You can't initialize. I'm going to tell it it's wrong. All right, I'm going to tell it it's wrong. You can initialize Git, but you can use Netlify CLI to create. Actually, you know what? Now I'm saying this. I do think it's wrong, but I also am not sure that I've tested this flow explicitly, where we create an empty site first and then we hook it up to Git later. So let's just do this. Let's just do this. We'll do what it says. AI is always right, right? Yes, of course it is. Yes, of course it is. All right, and I want to wrap up in about 10 minutes, so I'm not sure how far we'll get, but let's see. Let's see. Okay. I notice I move a lot slower on streams because I'm trying to talk and explain what I've been doing. All right, so here are your next steps. All right, let's create that repository. Sign in. Come on, come on. Lovely. Okay. New repository. What do we call it? House Project Manager. It's me. Can't spell. Yeah, we can keep it. Sure, whatever. Let's keep it public. That's it. And I'm just going to copy this. Repo is ready. Wait, actually say like, repo is ready. You can push the code to GitHub and GitHub while I go create the Netlify project. All right, and so let's hop over to Netlify. Make it a little bit bigger here. Make this bigger too. Okay. Well, that's silly. What now? I mean, this shouldn't matter. This is weird, though. Yeah, maybe I think something changed on our back end. Okay, anyways, what are we building? Web app. I'm definitely a senior web developer. I feel like this team already exists, but okay. Great, team, yes. Okay, cool. An import an existing project. We're gonna go to GitHub. We're gonna link up GitHub. We're gonna search for house. Cool. All right. Yahoo! And house project manager. It's available. Fantastic. Unless somebody creates it while they're watching this on the fly. Our base directory is good. We'll just leave that as is for now. We'll have to change some of these things. But really what we needed was we just need this thing to exist. So we can go to project configuration now, and I find this project ID. I'm going to copy that, and I'll say, okay, here's the Netlify site, or what's the project ID? Cool. Great. And then it should be able to continue and keep running here. I'm going to give it some more permissions. All right, and now let that run. We're going back over here. Let's trying that process again. Yeah, we're going to say make the default mode. Except edits. Okay. Yes. Interesting approach there. Keep it flowing. All right. And yeah, I would say, and then wildcards to read and edit. We're going to say read any file within the directory and subdirectories, I guess. Sure. Okay. I'm just looking at some other examples. So the other thing that I feel like I'm often for those web searches, and when it wants to read from a specific site, I'm saying that a lot, but I don't know that that's super consistent yet. I feel like these are probably the most frequent ones. I'll do this though. We'll say like same with yarn. Sometimes I'm using yarn, whatever. Okay, we got another one here. DB generate. I'm tempted to add Netlify CLI stuff here, but that gives again like a blanket permission to do some destructive action. So I want to make sure I have a little bit more control over that. All right, so I'm answering some questions over here. Well, we're gonna see what happens here. I'm gonna run that, because that shouldn't do anything in this repository. As I said, global defaults, and it's gonna, yeah, so here it goes. It's gonna ask me that it can have permission outside of this working directory, because I've given Claude permission to work within this project directory, but it wants to work in the home/.claude directory. So we're going to say, yeah, sure, go for it. Okay, so what's going on in the project itself now? answered a couple questions to, or gave it some permission so that it could, basically, here's what happened. So I wanted to keep this Git workflow because this is a project that I'm going to continue to work on. Oh, my video froze. Let's see if I can fix this for a sec. Hold on. I come back. I'm still frozen. I'm gonna check out my camera up here. We're gonna quit. We're gonna kill that. You know, sometimes the camera is like, these cameras are fancy and they're awesome, and then they don't work all the time, which is a little bit goofy. Let's see if we can come back online now. Okay, trying to start back up. Here I am. I'm back. Am I? Here I am. Hello again. Okay. So this was asking, yeah, right. What I was talking about was what we were doing here behind the scenes. So I wanted to maintain this Git workflow because what I see is I'm going to work on this project quite a bit. And as we get in and then actually use it, we're going to want to continue to make changes. I want to make sure that we're not at the mercy of just the code that I have on my machine, and my machine dies and it's gone. It's gone. So instead, I'm going to push it to GitHub, because then every time we push to the main branch in GitHub, we get a new deployment. We also get all sorts of workflows built in there, and protection against computers blowing up, sort of thing. And I could have just used NeonDB directly. I really like the Netlify DB extension, because what it does for me is it wraps Neon, but it also then gives me this configuration screen within Netlify that I can access the database through, which it's just convenient, because then everything I'm using within this project is available from the Netlify UI, which I think is really valuable. But to do that, I then had to actually have a GitHub project, push to GitHub, so that I could then have a Netlify project. I froze again, and then pull that project. So pull that GitHub repo and then just configure everything through Netlify. Let's go that. And then we can go through the proper channels to initialize the database on Netlify, and which will automatically provision the Neon database using the plugin. Okay. And then what we could do, so that Netlify DB init, that's what happened there. I'm back again. Let's see for how long this time. This computer is freaking out. And then it gives us this Drizzle boilerplate, which is where the schema for that database is defined. So then it comes in and it writes the schema. And after it's done writing that schema, it runs this other command, run db generate and db migrate, and that actually applies the schema to the database itself. And I want to show you that because I'm just about at time here and have to wrap up. And I will likely do a part 2 or do a follow-up, or maybe some like, oh my gosh, so many things are happening. Swim lessons, no. So do a follow-up, or I'll do a little like tweet thread or something like that on where we went from here. But let's get the basics up and running. Okay, so now it's going to compile TypeScript here just to make sure that there are no TypeScript errors. And then over here, okay, this is interesting. So it's like a really, but over here again, we're back to our global Claude permissions that we've been kind of doing on the side. Yeah, really, and I like that there's kind of a bunch of different lines for, npm commands, npx commands, yarn, git, GitHub, GH is the GitHub CLI. So it's great. I think this, I'm kind of skimming this, and it looks okay. I would say I haven't had to do this, and feels like that could be somewhat destructive. This also is way too open-ended. So we're going to get rid of those. Everything else feels like generally, so Claude isn't going to do anything with Git unless I tell it to do something with Git. So most of these feel, yeah, it feels safe because Claude's just, it's not going to do that unless I have some other configuration where I'm, or sub-agent or whatever that's like doing that by default. But then I'm in control of that too. So I think this is largely okay, but looks good. We'll say it looks mostly good. Remove yarn exec npm exec npx, and then write the file. All right, so the setup here in our project here is done. And now we see it going through the process of writing the files itself. We're going to say that it can edit the global settings file there. All right, and so this is going to take some time, but well, let's kind of try to get a sense of how far it is, because I would like to be able to show you something while we're still here. Okay. This feels good. This feels like productive. While we were waiting for things to happen, set up some global permissions. Can always change these later. In fact, I suspect we'll spin up a new project in the next stream, and I'm considering jumping on again tomorrow because there's something that I've really wanted to tinker with, and rather than do all this setup, I might just jump into it and see what happens, or maybe maybe like combine two different projects and kind of go back and forth like this. I know it can be hard to follow, but it could be interesting too. All right, so I'm gonna kill that. And see, we're just rolling here. You know what? While this is happening, I'll pull up the code so we can look at this. Also had this running, which might use the same port, so let's not do that. Okay, just kind of take a look at what's going on here. So here's our configuration file for Drizzle. We're looking for this Netlify database URL, which is a value. This is really cool. This is a cool part of this process, is that the database credentials aren't listed anywhere here on my machine. Instead, where am I? Over here. So here's what happened. When we ran Netlify DB init, it provisioned this new database, and that's what we can take a look at. So now we have this Neon extension is available. I had already enabled this extension on my team account. And by default, that database is gonna disappear in 7 days unless I claim it and add it to my account. So I'm going to do this in a second here. But we see, like, we have we have a database name already. And then what happened during that process, this is the coolest part to me, is that these environment variables got set. Okay, so if I go into project configuration down in environment variables, these are set and we see they were created by Neon. So my local instance, in theory, could have access to my database to run these commands as long as it can pull the environment variables from Netlify. And the way that works is, let's see if it's been added yet or not. And I like to, oh, it's done. Okay. The way that works is in my Vite config file, we have the Netlify Vite plugin. And so when I just run npm dev, the Netlify dev process hooks into the Vite dev process, and we get the environment variables automatically along with a bunch of other stuff, which is very, very cool. All right. I was going to try to not run commands manually. So yes, let's say run it. Let's say like, I'd say commit your changes, then run it. All right, and then back here, we're gonna claim this database to my personal organization here. And then I wanna see if I get, I think I have a link to jump over here. Yes, right here. So I can jump over to Neon. I wonder if it didn't sign me in automatically. Let's try this. And now I have this dashboard. This is amazing. And I can, so I can come into settings and then to make sure that I know what, this is house, oh God, if I forgot it already, house project manager. So I'm gonna save that. I wonder if this updates right away, by the way. Probably not, because I think this name, oh, it did. Amazing. I was thinking that was the actual ID, but nope. Cool. And so this is there, and now we can, can look at like the actual structure of the thing, which is cool. We're not going to have any data in here yet, but look, we've already got a schema. We've got some tables. All of this just happened. What we'll do last minute, because I gotta hop off here, is let's test this and see what we've got. So this is what I wanted to see was, will it actually work? And then this will determine what we need. Oh, holy smokes. Oh, okay. Oh no, it did. Yes, amazing, amazing. All right, let's see it. And this is exactly what I wanted. Just like bare bones styling. Test project number 1. Yada, yada, yada. It's not going to require anything else, hopefully. Is it going to work? Is it going to work? Okay, so we have a server error. This is probably going to have something to do with like validation or connection or whatever. But in general, we've got the beginnings of an application. Appreciate y'all hanging out with me today. We will have I'll either hold a little follow-up session, or in one of the upcoming live streams, I think I'll might tinker with this alongside another project. So we might kind of like group them together or something. Let's see what happens. But keep up on Twitter, and you can follow me there. I'm Sean C. Davis 29, and we'll keep updated, and I'll keep working in public. But hope you all enjoyed this. Hope you have a great Thursday, if today is Thursday for you, or just the day if you're watching this syndicated.